Shalom, my dear friends. Shalom and Shavua Tov. Today, the 12th day of the month of Elul of this year of the elevation of our merits, this year of 5,777, 3rd of September 2017. We are approaching the conclusion of this year of 5,777. And I shall be speaking later today, with the help of God, about the name of the coming year, the number of the coming year, just as this year has been the year of the elevation of our zechut, our merit, Aliyat Zechut, Ayin Zayin, 77, 5,777. So may it be His will that the coming year will be the year of Aliyat Chen, the elevation of our favor and the grace that we find in His eyes, our grace and the favor we shall find in His eyes as He continues with this amazing process of the redemption of His people. Well, that will be in today's session at 18:30 hours Israel time in my weekly Shavua Tov presentation. For now, I'd like to turn to today's studies in the Mikra, prophecy and wisdom, the wisdom of King Solomon and the beauty of King Solomon in Shir HaShirim, followed by today studying the secrets of the third letter of the Aleph Bet, the letter Gimmel, and then we shall be continuing later with the study of Likutei Moharan, teaching 15 in the first chelek, the first part of Likutei Moharan. And for now, let us turn to Shir HaShirim and again look over the opening parshiot of this work of consummate grace and beauty. Shalom, today, the 12th day of the month of Elul of the year 5,777, corresponding to the 3rd of September of the year 2017. And today, as we continue our study of King Solomon's Shir HaShirim, having had some sessions of introduction, I would like us today to look at the opening parshiot of Song of Songs from the beginning, chapter 1, verse 1 in our translations, and running through all the way to the end of verse 14. If we look at the Hebrew text as it is written in the scroll, and this Tanakh has been printed to follow the parasha divisions of the written scroll, we see that there is a natural break in the teaching, in the scroll, beginning from verse 9. The first 8 verses are really the introduction, setting the scene, and my plan, God willing, in our study of Shir HaShirim will be, since the text is widely available in translation, and since the parashiot are relatively short, then my plan is, with the help of God in each of our early sessions, to go through the whole of Shir HaShirim with the simple Hebrew pshat and following the perush of the Metzudat David that I have spoken about in my introduction, where he very beautifully clarifies the mashal and the nimshal. The Metzudat David clarifies the meaning of the external mashal of Shir HaShirim, that is to say, the love song between the beloved and her lover, and the he then goes on to explain very clearly and simply the mashal, as we have introduced it at length in our introductory sessions, of Israel yearning for our true master, our true Baal, the Holy One, blessed be He. and to return to him and have him to return to us. So we shall now begin with the opening 2 to 3 parshas of Shir HaShirim, following the Hebrew text and going through with the Perush of Metzudat David in a fairly rapid way, without my saying over his Hebrew, but reading what he says in translating into English. And then after we have been through, God willing, the whole of Shir HaShirim on this relatively pshat level of trying to understand the external mashal and what is the nimshal, then God willing, I hope to go over again the Shir HaShirim with reference to the commentary of Rashi principally, and that of the Targum Yonatan, which is our most ancient commentary on Shir HaShirim, together with references to the Kabbalistic overtones of the work. And the reason for following this pattern is because until we're familiar with the external mashal and the simple nimshal of Israel, the beloved, and her lover, the Holy One, blessed be He, until we are familiar with this, we shall only get confused by the many midrashim that are contained in Rashi and Targum Yonatan, both of whom expatiate on the foundations that are laid for us in the very clear commentary of Metzudat David. So going now with Metzudat David from the very opening of Shir HaShirim, Shir HaShirim Asher Shlomo, song of songs that is to Shlomo. Says the Metzudat David, Shir HaShirim, he wants to say here, this is the most excellent and choicest of all of the songs, there are others, for example, the song in Ezekiel chapter 16, verse 7, where God, through the prophet, is speaking to Israel as she came to him adorned in her adornments. But this is the most beautiful in all of the adornments, this song. And Metzudat David says that because King Shlomo translated, because King Shlomo composed many songs, as it says in First Book of Kings, chapter 5, verse 12, that his song was 5 and 1,000. That's why it says at the beginning of this work, this Sefer, that this song is the most precious and the most exalted of all of the songs that are attributed to Solomon. And because it is a song of love, it is going to tell in this song about the powerful bond of love, this fierce love that and a true attachment that exists between the exalted God and between his people Israel. And Metzudat David continues that he continues in King Solomon in this work in the mashal, the metaphor of strong and powerful love between a choshek, the one who has the cheshek, the desire in the heart, and the chashukah, his beloved. That as any time that they are separated one from the other, most certainly there will be tremendous yearning and longing between them, and they will be just waiting and longing for the time to come when they will have that true attachment. And even though the nimshal, that is the inner meaning, is not exactly similar to the mashal in every single detail and in every every matter that is raised in the mashal, this is of no consequence, says the Metzudat David, because these are the pathways of mashal, that the mashal, when you tell over a parable, you may add many details in order that the parable will sit on the very heart and go into the very inward belly of the people that listen to it. Well, this would be a fairly literary approach to Shir Hashim. Of course, Kabbalistically, we know that every single word and every single letter is inspired by Ruach HaKodesh, and so where the mashal departs seemingly in certain details, that is as the foundation of drush and sod and remez. Let's continue now with verse 2 of Shir HaShirim, and then going to the commentary of the Metzudat David. The second verse, Mishokeni menashikos pihu ki tovim dodecho miyoin. Let him kiss me with the kisses of his mouth, for better are your loving kindnesses than wine. Says the Metzudat David on commenting on this verse, now begins to express the work begins to express the tremendous longing that came after the separation of the beloved from his beloved maiden, and he went off. And what happened in those days? In other words, from this point on, after introducing this as King Solomon's Song of Songs, it's going to tell us about after the pair are separated and all that happened in that time. And continues the Metzudat David that even though we do not find explicit mention in the text here, in the Mikra, of a separation between the chashuk and the chashukato, between the lover and his beloved, we never find any explicit mention in the text to his abandoning her, even though it is, and also even more so, it's not ever explained who is the speaker in the case of each of the verses of the song. We have in a contemporary script of a play of Shakespeare or any other dramatist the name of the speaker going through the dialogue when the dialogue changes rapidly from speaker to speaker. We do not have this in our text of Shir HaShirim, and that's why it can be so confusing to a superficial reader to understand exactly what is being said. And here now the Metzudat David explains to us that these are the ways of high-flown poetry, most eloquent tzachus melitzas hashirim, the clarity of the eloquence of such songs, a real love song, where the very brevity and the elusiveness, the sealed nature of the words is what characterizes them. But they prove by themselves who is the speaker and who is answering. That is to say, in our text, the way that we know who is speaking, who is the speaker and who is being addressed, is because Hebrew differentiates between the form of the male and the female. So when the female is addressing the male, she's addressing him in the grammatical masculine form. And likewise, when he is addressing her, he's addressing her in the feminine form. And from this we can infer who is speaking. And as we shall see, there are introduced another set of, as it were, actors in this trialogue, and these are the daughters of Yerushalayim, who are also being addressed here by the beloved maiden, and they also answer her, as we shall see. But now here on verse 2 then, having given us this introduction, the Metzudat David continues in his explanation. So now it is as if the Chashukah, the beloved maiden, her very insides are in turmoil over the tremendous yearning that she has for him. And she says to herself, she's really talking in verse 2, when she says, Yishokenim and Yishikospiu, she's like swooning and talking to herself, said to herself, Omeret el liba, who would give that he would kiss me with more kisses, this beloved of mine, just like those kisses, beloved kisses that he would kiss me with his mouth in the former days. And even though she speaks about the kisses, she adds that they're the kisses of his mouth with a further specification and explanation, for that is the way of women that recall the love of their youth. And they clarify and express forth their words with additional expressions because of their great longing. And this for them is the eloquence of their love song. So here he's started to explain, who is she addressing? Well, she's starting off by addressing in a hitbodedut to herself. And I think it's very important for us to understand that although, as we shall see presently, the Metzudat David explains the nimshal between the beloved Israel and the lover, the Holy One, blessed be He, each one has to internalize that each one of us is the representative of the whole people. The whole people is present in the soul of each and every one of us. Each one of us is part of this this creation of the Almighty, and in other words, the fire of Shir Hashirim burns in the heart of each and every Yisrael. And for that reason, it is beneficial to us to understand how Shir Hashirim speaks about the time of elevation and exaltation, the receiving of the Torah, the exodus from Egypt, the entry into the land, that each of these concepts is not only a national concept, but is in the heart of each and every true Israelite. And for that reason, when we are using Shir Hashirim as a devotional work, we are letting the Shekhinah and letting the soul of Israel speak through our lips as we say, each one individually, Yishokenim and Shikois Pihu, Ki Tovim Dodechem Uyoy, and let him kiss me again with those kisses. Let me have a restoration of that original inspiration. And the continuing then with the Perush of Metzudat David, he says on the words Ki tovim dodecha miyayin, your loving kindnesses are better than wine. He says, through her great love for him, it is absolutely engraved in her soul as if he is standing before her. Here Metzudat David is commenting on how we have the shift from the third person to the second person. Yishokenim and Hishikois Pihu, let him kiss me with kiss of his mouth. Ki toivim doidecho, because your loving kindness is doidecho. The chof indicates you. She's turning to him directly, even though he's not seemingly present, because of this way that he is engraved in her very soul. And to him she says how much she desires these kisses, because the loving shows of love that you showed me back then, they were better than the feast of wine, the banquet of wine, and that is why I desire them. And now turning to the second part of Metzudat David comment on verse 2, the Nimshal. The Nimshal is to say that Knesset Yisrael, when she is in exile, she remembers the love that Hashem showed for her at the time when he took her out from Egypt. the original bond between God and Israel, she's now referring to. In other words, the concept of ishokeni of kissing is of a true yichud. There are levels of yichud as explained in the Kabbalistic writings, and the one of the most intimate is kissing, because the ruach of the lover and the ruach of the beloved meet and join in the mouths. So that is a concept of yichud, where there's a direct contact between the Holy One, blessed be He, and Israel, which was at the time of the Exodus. And at the time when Israel stood facing Mount Sinai to receive the Torah, and all times when the Shekhinah rested upon Israel from that time until through history, for example, in the time of the Temple of King Solomon, and her heart now is longing and yearning, and she's pleading before Him to shine forth again with His Shekhinah, His indwelling presence, to clarify to her the secret reasons of the Torah and the mysteries of her hidden treasures. In other words, for the Torah lover, the Torah itself is the treasure chamber of the king, and therefore, besides the intimacy with God through prayer and the mysteries, these mysteries can only be revealed in their true face to the true sages who know the mysteries of the Torah, and that is why her appeal is to return to this state of pristine unity. And he continues, we now go to verse 3. Verse 3, L'reach shemonecho tovim, shemen turak shemecho, al kein alomois ahivucho. L'reach shemonecho tovim, in their fragrance your oils are good. Poured out oil is your name, and therefore the maidens love you. Says the Metzudat David on this verse, L'reach shemonecho tovim, for fragrance your oils are good. It's because of the fragrance of the good oils that you anoint your flesh with. He's going right to the mashal with its very romantic and even erotic overtones. This is the holy love that is being expressed here with all of its stages. Zer umat zer, quite against the eroticism of paganism. But here we have the love of holiness, and that's why it's so wonderful when each time you anoint your flesh with the oil, and the illusion of the oil is your name, which is mentioned in the verse, Ki shemen turak shemecho. It's like your name is like oil that is poured out, because the fine oil has this fragrance that spreads afar, and the more oil, which is a metaphor for revelation that comes forth, all of those maidens are in love with you because of these fragrant odors. And says the Metzudat David Animshal, here the meaning is that on account of all the wonders and miracles of the history of Israel, your name has become publicized and known among all of the nations. So continuing now with the Hebrew text in verse 4, Moshcheni acharecho norutzo, draw me after you, let us run. Hevi'ani hamelech chadorov, nogilo v'nismacho boch, nazkiro dodecho miyayin, meishorim ahivucho. Moshcheni acharecho norutzo, draw me after you, let us run. So here she starts by addressing him, and then she is talking again to herself as Knesset Yisrael, let us run. Hevi'ani hamelech chadorov. The king has brought me to his chambers. Hevi'ani. This is the person that is speaking from the beginning. He has brought me to his chambers, the lover. These are the words of the beloved. And now she is really addressing the world in her joy. Come share in this joy. Nogilo v'nismecho boch. Let us rejoice and exult in you. Naskiro dodecho miyayin. Let us recall your loving favors through wine, more than wine, through the wine of the Torah. Meishorim ahivucho. Those who went in the straight path, they are those that loved you. So here's the conclusion of the first parasha of Shir Hashirim in verse 4. With the parasha break there at the end of verse 4, and to follow through now with the perush of the Metzudat David on verse 4. Moshcheni acharecho, draw me after you, he says, paraphrasing, draw me to you with even just a little gesture, meshichamu etet, and I will come running after you with tremendous speed. Just give me a sign, give me a nudge, give me some encouragement. I will go running after you with all speed. And here she addresses her lover as the king. Throughout most of the very beautiful love lyric of Shir Hashirim, the lover is a shepherd, and the beloved is also a shepherdess and one who tends to the orchards. But according to the mashal, they are a lover and his beloved that see each other as king and queen. And according to the nimshal, the king is, of course, the Holy One, blessed be he, and the beloved is Knesset Yisrael, the assembly of Israel. So here paraphrases the Metzudat David, Hevi'ani hamelech chadorov, the king has brought me to his chambers. It is through this that you are so beloved and so dear in my eyes as a king. In other words, he's pointing up the mashal here. You are in the eyes of the beloved maiden as a king. So bring me to your chambers, and there I will have joy and delight with you, and I will recall the kindnesses and goodness more than a feast of wine. That is the mashal. And in a way, I think through Shir Hashirim we can see a progression from the first arousal of love and perhaps the very erusin, the betrothal, and then the nisuim, the actual marriage festival with chuppah, as we shall see in the continuation, that we see the progression of this romance, where here is the very first blossoming of the love, where it's the enchanting odors that are drawing her. She says, as explains with Sudat David in the Mashal, there I shall rejoice with you more than in a feast, an imshal. That is to say that Knesset Yisrael said, give me some sign of salvation. Moshcheni, draw me, give me a sign of redemption. Give me a sign of your favor. And then I will hurry to return to you with all of my heart, wholeheartedly. And through this did he bring me to the temple. And through this I shall rejoice and exult in your salvation. And I will remember to give thanks to you over all of the wonders and all of the salvations. And in the explanation of the expression Meishorim ahivucho, he says what these words are saying is, I will not be ashamed as to why I am constantly chasing after your love. In other words, when Israel has to appear before the nations, she will not be ashamed of being so completely attached to God that she will be willing to lay down lives, to be burned at stake in the sanctification of God's names. Because he says this is not merely on account of desire, but it comes on account of the great exaltedness and the justice that is found in you. In other words, it's not merely that Israel is infatuated, but that Israel is drawn to the truth and the true exaltedness of God over all of the other gods that are worshipped and adored across the world, because it is those that love mesharim, those that love true justice and righteousness, it is those that have loved you on account of the exalted nature of your being and its righteousness. So now he goes on to the Nimshal. He says that Knesset Yisrael are now continuing saying that this love is strong in my hands from the time of the patriarchs, my fathers, my ancestors that were men of Yosher, men of righteousness. And it was they who put me onto the truth. It was they who established the truth in me. So now we go into the second parasha, which really takes us directly into the yearning of the Galut, where Israel is now faced with the nations in her situation of exile and shame. Starting now then from verse 5, which is the beginning of the second parasha that goes through all the way to the end of verse 8. Again, as the Metzudat has aroused us to the point, this is very, very terse. She at times does not expatiate, as in verse 5, Shechoiro ani b'novo b'nos Yerushalayim ki oholei kedor ki yerios shalomo Shechoiro ani, dark am I, b'novo, but beautiful. B'nos Yerushalayim, daughters of Jerusalem, the first entry of a new participant in this divine love song, the B'nos Yerushalayim. Who are they? And she continues talking about herself. K'oholei Kedor, am I like the tents of Kedar, those darkened, blackened tents, blackened by the elements? Kyrios Shalomo, no, white and clear like the drapes of Solomon, the drapes of the sanctuary. Al tira'uni she'ani shachar chores, do not look at me that I am darkened. Sheshezofasni hashomesh, that the sun has darkened me. B'nei imi nicharuvi, Samuni noitero es hakromim, karmi sheli lo notorti. Here she tells the whole story. Al tiruni she'ani shachar chores, do not look at me downwards that I am darkened. Sheshezofasni hashomesh, that the sun has tanned me. B'nei imi, the children of my mother. Yet another set of participants in this lyric that could be said in a village with families and their fields and vineyards and meadows down below. But here, B'nei imi nicharuvi, the sons of my mother, have been angry with me. Their rage was heated against me. Somuni noitero es hakromim. They placed me as the girl to guard the kramim, the vineyards, the orchards, Notero, the feminine. So she is speaking here, the beloved. They made me the keeper of the vineyards and the orchards. Kar misheli lo notorti. So my own vineyard I was not able to guard. And now she turns from them, from the Benos Yerushalayim, yearning back to her beloved. Here she is faced with this exile among these village girls who she has to defend herself against. She's apparently been abandoned. And she turns wistfully to him, Hagido li she'ohavu nafshi. Tell me, you that my soul loves. Eicho sir'eh, eicho tarbitz b'tzohoroim, shalomo ehyeh ka'oitio al edrei chavirecho. Hagido li, tell me, she'ohavu nafshi, you that my soul loves. Eicho sir'eh, where is it that you are pasturing? He is now addressed as the shepherd. The one that she loves is the shepherd. Where are you? Where are you pasturing? Echo tarbitz b'tzohoroim, where will you set down the flocks to rest in the heat of the midday sun? Shalomo ehyeh ka'oitio. For why should I be like an oitio, like a one that swoops and flies al edrei chaverecho, through the over to the flocks of your companions? Again, the village pastoral with the bands of the shepherds, but she wants only him. Why, if she can't find him, she should be forced to go to the flocks of chaverecho, which would be in the parable, the other god, in the Nimshal, the other gods. If Israel is pressed in the heat of midday pain of the exile and she does not know where he is to take care of her, then she might be tempted to swoop to the others. And he replies to her in this love lyric from where they are together, yearning from the ends of the earth, from earth to heaven. Imlo sedi iloch ayofo banoshim. If you do not know yet for yourself, you have not yet reached the conclusion for yourself. You hayofo banoshim, he clearly addresses her as beautiful among all the women, among all the other shepherdesses and all the other girls of the village. You are the king's choice, hayofo banoshim, the beautiful of the nations. If you don't know yet, tzi'iloch be'ikvei hatzoin, ure'i es giryoisayich al mishkenois oroim. Then go out for yourself, tzi'iloch, like God said to Abraham, lech lecho, go for your own benefit. He is addressing here, we see from the feminine loch, tzi'iloch, the verb tzi'i, go out, is feminine, loch, for you, feminine, be'ikve hatzoin, go in the steps of the flock, ure'i es giryoisayich al mishkenois horoim, and pasture your little tender young lambs and goats by the side of the mishkanois, the tents, dwellings of the ro'im, the shepherds. So let us now follow through these words of this second parasha as explained by the Metzudat David. Metzudat David tells us on, now starting verse 5, Shechoyer ani, I'm darkened. She now turns her face, according to the mashal, to the maidens, the girls of her group, her class, her age, the village girls, as it were. She says to them, you daughters of Yerushalayim, the society of Yerushalayim perhaps is a very, very small town, way, way back. Don't you think that my lover has abandoned me? on account of the darkness, that the dark complexion that you find in me now. Because even though I am darkened, for all that I'm truly beloved in his eyes. Many teachings here, of course, about the nekudah, the dark little spot that is the source of beauty, the beauty spot of the neshama, the nekudat tovah, the good point, the point of beauty. Even though others may not see it, I am beautiful in his eyes. And even though I have the darkness of the tents of Kedar, which are spread out against the rains of the heavens, and they are darkened because of the constantly being damp through the rain, I'm nevertheless easy to be bleached and whitened, just like the drapes and the curtains of King Solomon, which are absolutely pristine white and clear, and for that reason I have never been rejected by him. That is the mashal. And says Metzudat David, the nimshal is that the Knesset Yisrael says before the nations, the Benot Yerushalayim, the nations of the world, don't think that the Holy One, blessed be He, has despised me on account of the sins that may be found in me. Because nevertheless I am beloved in His eyes on account of the zechut, the merit that is found in me. And when I shall return to Him and repent, He will atone for the sin of my transgression, and all will be turned white like snow. Continuing then with Metzudat David on verse 6, Al tiruni, do not look at me, ki shechoira ani, that I am darkened. Al tiruni shani shchar choros, don't look at me that I am darkened. On verse 6 says the Metzudat David, don't look at me in a manner of bizayon, a manner of contempt, on account of my being absolutely darkened and blackened, because this is not something that was born in me from the womb of my mother. This is not something congenital. Very beautiful point here. This has come through the mikreh, through the accidents of time, for it is the sun that has shone upon me, and on account of this, there developed this darkness in me, this intense sunlight to which I've been exposed, and therefore I will easily be able to be bleached and whitened as soon as the thing, the cause that is presently causing this darkness is removed, namely once the exile is removed. And then he continues, B'nei imi nicharu bi, the sons of my mother were angry and raging against me. Metzudah says, don't think this is the village girl addressing the other girls in the village. Don't think that I am a yatzanit. I'm a girl that goes out all the time and chasing around in the field, out in the sun there, and I don't ever spend time with my foot in my house, because that is not the case. It's my brothers, the sons of my mother, my maternal brother, one of the closest family relationships in the Torah, most intimate. They got angry with me and they forced me to sit there in a kind of detention and to guard their orchards out there under the sun. And I never was able even to, before that, to stand guard over my own kerem, my own orchard, because I was not accustomed to being exposed there to standing in the sun. And that is what has made me so dark. That is the mashal. And then the nimshal is that Knesset Yisrael is saying, do not show contempt to me, do not disparage me on account of my having transgressed back then with the golden calves in the days of the kings of Israel, because this did not come forth from my own heart, but I was forced to do this, there was an imposition from the regimes of those kings. They were imposing this false path on Israel, and I myself would have been only much more happy to be able to separate from them and to get away from these forces. So, having defended herself in this way, the maiden before the nations, then in verse 7, she turns to the lover. Hagido li she'av nafshi, tell me, you that my heart, my soul loves. Says Metzudas David, now she's sending her words out to her lover. And she says to him, you, my beloved, that my soul loves you. Tell me, please, where are you pasturing the flocks? Where are you having them sit down at the time of the intensity of the sun of the day? And he continues as if she's saying, well, let me know your place. I will come to you and to join you, to pasture the flocks with you. And then continuing, why should it be like this swooping bird? The otiyah is like an expression of swooping down like a bird of prey. Why should I be wandering around, says the beloved maiden, here and there with the various flocks of your companions, to have to search more and more where I can find you? And the Nimshal here, says Metzudas David, is that she's saying, Knesset Yisrael is saying, open my heart to understand your truth and your power. Why should I be drawn? Why is it that I'm drawn after you, and why am I attached to you? Why should I have to have my mind wander around all over trying to find you, and I'm sunk in perplexity? In other words, it's her cry out of spiritual exile to explain where he is to be found. And then in verse 8, the closing verse of this parasha, if you do not know, explains Mr. David, it's as if the chashuk, the lover that she so longs for, answers her and sends his words to her, saying, you who are the most beautiful of all the women, you're the most outstanding of all the girls, if you don't know where is the place of my encampment, then go out and follow the steps of the feet of the flock, that is to say, my flock. And you too come out and pasture your young lambs there by the tents of the other shepherds, for that is my place. And then you will be close to me. And the Nimshal here is as if the Holy One, blessed be He, is answering Knesset Yisrael. If you've not yet attained the wisdom to understand my truth by yourself, then rely upon the tradition, the Kabbalah, that which we have received, and take hold of the ways of your forefathers, and thereby you will be attached to me. The other shepherds are the forefathers of Israel, and then you will be above all of the nations of all of the lands, just as I am great above all of the gods of the peoples, the other nations, and all of the angels above. And with that, we conclude our study of the opening two parshiot of Shir HaShirim with the Hebrew text and with the explanation of the commentary of Metzudas David of the basic mashal and the basic nimshal. So with that, my friends, we will now take a brief interval, after which I'll be back and talking about today's third letter of the alphabet, the letter Gimmel. Shalom, my dear friends. Shalom, back again for the next part of our studies. I hope you're enjoying the backgrounds that keep on shifting and changing behind me. These are the marvels of contemporary technology, that you can do this with a click of a button to just change the background. And I hope that you are enjoying these beautiful backgrounds, which give us a foretaste of the great beauty of the Garden of Wisdom. And today we come to our study of the third letter of the Holy Hebrew alphabet, the letter Gimmel. Shalom. Today, the 12th day of the month of Elul of the year 5777, corresponding to the 3rd of September of the year 2017. And we now today come in our study of the Hebrew letters to the third letter of the Hebrew alphabet, the letter Gimmel. Of course, the letters of the Hebrew alphabet all have allusions in their names. Aleph is like an ox, and the Aleph has its two apparent horns above, and it's also the beginning Aleph from the Hebrew expression of to teach. And Aleph brings forth the bet, the bayit, the house of Bereshit, and then out of the house comes forth the Gimmel, followed by the Dalet. Gimmel having the connotation of gamal, a camel, but also of gomel, one that gives and bestows. And Gimmel is pointed towards Dalet. The face of Gimmel is towards the letter Dalet, which is not only a delet, a door, but also delet, one that does not have, one that is poor. And as we come now then to the study of the letter Gimmel, let us observe, following now the Mishnat Sofrim of Chafetz Chaim, the laws of Mishnat Sofrim about the required form of the required form of the letters. We come now to the form of the Gimmels as brought down in the Mishnat Sofrim of Chafetz Chaim. Well, now, the Gimmel is made up of really two parts. The first part is the main part of the letter, which is like a Zion. And that is the head of the letter and also the base of the letter. So the head of the Gimmel that you see, which is a horizontal stroke of the pen at the top, and on the top of that are the three crowns, the three maklot, which are attached to the head of the Gimmel. So that is actually the form of the letter Zayin. Here before us now is the actual form of the letter Zayin itself. And what we see in the letter Gimmel is that the basic shape of the Zayin, the head and the leg, are present only in our way of writing the Gimmel. The leg has now been slanted as it goes down from the head towards the right hand of the page, and has been added to the basic form of the Zion, the left hand leg also, or it could be called the foot. And so there is an intrinsic relationship between Gimmel, the third letter of the alphabet, and the Zion, the seventh letter, which we could expound upon for ages. But looking at the strict halachot, with this Zion, the head of the Zion should be pass over both sides of the leg. In other words, if the head were all to the left, that would make this look like a Vov. And the distinction between the Vov and the Zion is that while the Vov is rounded on the right hand side and there's no extruding section, in the Zion there is definitely, the head is square on the leg, and the hair has to be squared all around, and the head has to be sitting with the leg pretty much in its middle. Remember, we're talking about scribes writing quite small letters, as we shall presently see. But now, what we've just heard about the way of positioning the head on the leg is common to all of the other letters, which are also based on the form of a Zion. Here I'm going to present you with some of the other letters. The letter that is the tzaddik at the end of a word is also essentially a Zion with a Yud attached to it. And the same law that we are hearing about now in our focus on the writing of the Gimmel applies to all of the other letters that have this Zion, that has this form of the Zion. Here is the tzaddik kefufa, the tzaddik as it's written in the middle of the word. It also has the head of the Zion, where the Zion's leg has actually come, is sitting down on the ground. It's bending down on its knees here with a Yud, but it's essentially the form of a Zion. The same is true of the Nun Peshuta, the long Nun, as it's written at the end of a word. It's essentially an extended Zion, and the same with the letter tzaddik, as it's written in the middle of the word. It's has the form of a Zion that is bent down. The same with the letter shin. The letter shin has as its left hand, most left hand part, a letter Zion, and this is true of all of these letters that are made up of a Zion. The same with the letter ayin. They all have a left hand Zion. Here the ayin is essentially a Vov that has been curved round downwards with a Zion stuck into it. Well, now going back to the actual form of the Gimmel, we digress because of the head of the Gimmel, which is in common with all of those other letters that have are made up out of a Zion with some other letter with them. So, and those other letters, we mentioned them in our previous section, those are the letters Shin, Ayin, Tet, Nun, Zayin, Gimel, Tzadik. And the mnemonic that they spell out is Sha'atnez Getz. Well, Sha'atnez is the forbidden mixture of wool and linen that may not be worn, and a gates is a spark of fire. And these 7 words, these 7 letters all have the crown of 3 on them. And there is a special reason for this, a very mystical reason, which the Mishnah Berurah, the author of our Mishnah Sofrim, brings in his laws in Mishnah Berurah on the end of the laws of Tefillin, the end of Siman Lamed Vav 36, where at the very closing words he quotes, he says, these letters that have to have the tag, the crown on top, Sha'atnez, which is this word that the Torah uses for the forbidden mixture of wool and linen or other forbidden mixtures like sowing wheat and barley in the same field, or others with vine, etc. These words, sha'atnas, actually make up the letters of the words Satan az. The Satan, the accuser, is fierce. And these are two great accusers. One is the Satan, the accuser. One is the Az, the powerful one. And this is also the other two letters, Getz, because Getz is also the name of an accuser. And the crowns that are written upon them are like a sword and a spear to be saved from them. What we're hearing is that these particular letters do have an aspect of evil and a part of the evil that comes into the world, but we are protected from that evil through the crowns that are written on those 7 letters. So now continuing with the Mishnat Sofrim on our laws of the letters, speaking about the letter Gimmel, he says that the head of the Gimmel has to be thick. That is to say, when the Gimmel is written on the page, the head of the Gimmel has to be written with the thick breadth of the pen. So the whole pen is drawn from the left to the right, and the thickness, therefore, is the thickness of one kulamus, one breadth of the pen of the scribe. And now he says that the right leg of the Gimmel has to be somewhat narrower. This is not a full breadth of the pen that is being used to make the downward stroke of the Gimmel. This is a narrower line which is made. This is called the right leg of the Gimmel, and it has to descend below the bottom of the line on which the scribe is writing. When a Sefer Torah is written, the parchment is scored with horizontal lines which are not filled in with any coloring. They are without color, but they are there to guide the scribe as to the height of his letters. And the right-hand leg has to go down further than the left-hand leg, according to the way that the letter is written in the Torah scroll, in the Tefillin and the Mezuzot. And of course, all of these are profound Kabbalistic secrets here, why this is so. And these are the opinions of millennia of sages. And continuing on, he says that this left regel, this left a foot, Yerech, this should be on a slight slant, as we hear. As the foot extends forward, it should be on a very slight slant, but not too much. And it must also not be twisted. That is to say, the left leg must not be pointing downwards, but it should be more or less drawn forth by the scribe horizontally, but with this slight upward angle. And that is because the left leg of the Gimmel is actually setting forth towards the coming letter of the 22 letters, the letter Dalet. Now, continuing, he says that the left leg should be drawn forth from the right leg with a certain thickness of the pen before it extends outwards. And the reason for this is because the form of the Gimmel is suggestive of the form of the Nun Kefufo, that is, of the the nun as it's written in the middle of the word, the distinction between the nun and the Gimmel, as in the case of the Gimmel, the attachment of the left leg is far narrower than it is in the case of the nun. But otherwise, the forms of the nun and the Gimmel are very reminiscent of one another, and that has to be preserved in the writing of the left leg of the Gimmel. Now, continuing, he says that there is an art in writing this left leg. The difference between the form of the Gimmel as we have it in our Torah scrolls today and earlier forms of writing the letter were that in earlier forms the Zayin was written vertically coming down, and the left foot was coming forth from the right foot at a lower point than the bottom. It was going under the bottom of the imaginary line here, and this is to enable a letter coming after the nun to be written adjacent to it, and the letter that is being written adjacent to the nun will not appear to be too far away because of the way that the left leg of the nun is protruding. So one can see that if a scribe had to write the word gam, for example, which is the word gimel and the word mem, in the way these were written formally, with the gimel written as with her right leg extending down below the bottom of the line, so the left leg can come forth and will not interfere with the writing of the mem coming after the Gimmel. It will not cause it written too far away, as would happen if the left leg of the Gimmel was extended too far forth. That is how earlier scribes wrote the Gimmel. Later scribes have overcome this by slanting the right leg of the Gimmel to the right in order to enable the letter that comes after the Gimmel to be written close to the head of the Gimmel without too much space, which at the top would make it look as if it was a new word if there were too much space. So this is why ostensibly, according to the outer halacha, the right leg of the Gimmel is angled towards the right hand of the bottom line. Now, as we've already learned, there have to be 3 tagim, 3 crowns on the head of the Gimmel, and if the left leg of the Gimmel were to be connected to the Gimmel without a break distinguishing it from the nun, then the Gimmel would be invalid. If the leg was coming out directly without a narrow attaching line to the letter nun, this would render the letter invalid. And with that, we conclude our study of the laws of the letter Gimmel from the Mishnat Sofrim of Chafetz Chaim. And with that, my dear friends, we will have a very brief interval before we will come to some more study of Chassidut from Rabbi Nachman. Shalom, my dear friends. Now we come back to the third part of our study today, which is the study of Likutei Moharan. Shalom, today, the 12th day of the month of Elul of the year 5777, corresponding to the 3rd of September of the year 2017. We continue now our studies in Rabbi Nachman's Likutei Moharan in Torah Tedvov, the 15th lesson of Chelik Aleph, the first part of the traditional Hebrew printing of Likutei Moharan. And we had learned in the previous section, the opening sections of this teaching, that in order to taste the taste of the hidden light, it is necessary to elevate the faculty of awe and fear to its source. And how is this to be done? It's be done by mishpat, by judgment. And it is this concept of how a person uses judgment on himself or herself in hitbodedut that Rabbi Nachman now addresses in one of the classic passages of Likutei Moharan, setting forth what hitbodedut is all about and how it is actually effective. This is the arousal from below, when a person is willing to sit down in judgment on themselves and to apply the law of the Torah to all that they find in their self-examination in order to improve and elevate and correct themselves. And he introduces by what will happen if they don't do that. If a person will not judge and examine himself, then they judge and examine that person above, that is to say, in the heavenly court, which will then exert its influence into our world. And in support of this, Rabbi Nachman brings a tradition of our sages that is brought in the Midrash on Book of Deuteronomy, Devarim Rabbah. You must know an ancient tradition. If there is no din, no process of law and order and judgment down here below in our world, know that there is a law and a judgment and a decree in heaven. You cannot escape it. Either we do it ourselves or it will be applied to us. Now when they, that is to say the heavenly forces, judge the person with the judgment and the decree from above, then the decree and the law will be clothed in all things. All and everything will become shluchim, messengers, envoys, and emissaries, lamokoim, to God, who is called the place of the universe. La'sois bezehu ish mishpot kosuf, to execute on this person the judgment and the decree that has been written and decreed in the heavenly court. As our sages have said, Rabbi Nachman here is bringing support for his statement about how the judgment can be clothed in anything in the world. Support from the Talmud, Nedarim, Daf Mem Aleph, where the sages comment on the verse in Psalm 119, verse 92, that says, Lemishpatecho omdu hayoim, for the sake of your judgments have they stood this day. Ki hakol avodecho, for all are your servants. And now the Talmud explains, mishpatecho omdu, that is to say, who are those who are standing ready for God's judgments? Those are those who are ready to stand there to execute them. Azai, the continuation of the verse in Psalms, Hakol avodecho, all are your servants. That is to say, the comment of our sages on this verse, all are your servants, is they can all execute the judgment against this person. So Rabbi Nachman is not just saying, he is supporting his words through the saying of our sages in the Talmud. Avol k'sheshofet es atzmoi, but when the person will judge him or herself, u'chesheyesh din lamato ein din lamalo, and when there is a process of judgment down below where we initiate and execute the judgment on ourselves in our efforts at self-correction, ein din lamalo, we may infer from the above statement that there is no need for judgment from above. And then there is no need for the yir'ah, for the fear and dread that the executors of God's judgment are sent to instill. There's no need for this fear to get clothed in anything to arouse that person. He or she of their own volition are already making the arousal, and there's no need to send them an arousal in the form of some external phobia with which they are confronted. And this new teaching of the efficacy of one's own self-judgment comes out from another comment by the sages in the Talmud Soita, Daf Hey Amud Beis. For some derech, now they are quoting from Psalm 50, for some derech, the one who places his path, al enu b'yesha elokim, I will show him the salvation of God. Here is how our sages interpret this verse in Psalms. For some derech, the one some, he puts his path, mishesom ol chesov, the one who puts and sets forth his paths before him to examine them. Hainu sheshofet ol chesov, he judges his paths. As it is written in Exodus chapter 21, the beginning of the portion of Mishpatim, ve'ele ha-mishpatim asher tosim lifnehem, these are the judgments that you shall put before them. Again, the same word as in Psalm 50, som ol chesov, tosim, you place the judgments. Through this som ol chesov, the one who assesses his pathways through judgments by comparing what he or she does to the laws of God, through that process, I will show him the salvation of God. Even in the place of Elokim, severe judgment, there will be yesha, there will be salvation to the person that judges him or herself. Yesha Elokim, that is ze bechinas yir'o. Rabbi Nachman explains the overtones of the name of God used in this verse. It has the overtone of yir'o, the fear that either we have in ourselves, or if we run away from it, God will put us before us. It's written in Koheles, Ecclesiastes chapter 12, Eso Elokim Yero, be in fear of Elokim, in fear of God's arm of judgment. So when the person is assessing their own behavior, and then Elokim, God will show them salvation from the hand of judgment of Elokim. That is to say, Rabbi Nachman now draws out the inference from the teaching of the sages on the verse from Psalm 50, Hainu bechinas yiro oilo mihaklipo umehomois alidei mishpot. That is to say that the aspect of yiro, the faculty of innate fear in our hearts, rises up out of the klipa. That is to say, we are no longer in terror of the outside husk. We are not afraid of the nations, not afraid of God's external messengers. How? Alidei mishpat, through judgment. Initially, the fear was clothed in the husk. We were in fear of it because of this outer husk that God put around it to precisely instill that fear in us if we will not arouse ourselves to fear of God ourselves. So This explains why when a person is afraid of, afraid for himself because of something, misar, be it some government official, miganovim, from thieves, usha'or pakorim, other things that people are afraid of, this is explained that the innate faculty of fear that runs through the creation, because the creation has been created through God's attribute of gevurah, of din, of judgment, together with his kindness. This aspect of fear in the creation is now clothed in this earthly, terrestrial officer, or fear of the thief, or some other thing. For if the yir'ah, the attribute of fear, were not clothed in that external thing, there would be no power in that thing to cause the person to be afraid, because the person would actually be afraid only of God and would know that no outer force can harm them without the authority of God. And so we see that here Rabbi Nachman has really encapsulated the whole path of Hidbodedut, which is his most important and basic teaching to us, the path of self-examination according to the yardstick of the Torah, examining our behavior, our attributes, our habits, and our words, our thoughts, our feelings, all according to the yardstick of the Torah. Through this, we can free ourselves from fear of any earthly material force and be only in awe of God. And this is step one to the hidden light. So with that, my friends, we conclude for today our Kollel studies, and I'll be back, God willing, at 18:30 hours Israel time today with a discussion about the year of grace that is coming, 5,778. So goodbye for now from Avram's Tent Internet Kollel, and back, God willing, with Shavua Tov. Hook up at 18:30 hours Israel time.